In the scorching summer of 1889, a 50-year-old widow stood alone on her New Mexico ranch porch, watching dust rise on the horizon. 8 armed men rode toward her property with one demand: sell or die. Behind her stood a foreman and 2 ranch hands. In front of her, a powerful company backed by railroad millions that had never lost a land dispute. Her father had died defending this ground. Her mother had buried him and stayed. Now, Elena Varga faced 20 professional gunmen willing to take it by force. She had 3 hours to surrender everything her family had bled for, or make a stand that seemed like suicide. What happened next proved that the most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the most guns. It's the one who's already decided some things are worth dying for. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Some lessons about courage can only be learned by watching someone refuse to bend when the whole world tells them to break. In the summer of 1889, a 50-year-old woman named Elena Varga proved that the most dangerous opponent isn't always the youngest or the strongest. It's the one who's already lost everything except their principles. The Varga Ranch sat in the high desert of New Mexico territory, 20 miles from anything resembling civilization. 1,200 acres of scrubland, rocky hills, and a spring-fed creek that never ran dry. Elena's father had claimed it in 1862, built the stone house with his own hands, and died defending it from Apache raiders in 1871. Her mother lasted another 3 years before fever took her. Elena inherited it all at 19. 31 years later, she was still there. The house stood solid, thick adobe walls, small windows, a covered porch facing east. Inside, the air stayed cool even when the summer sun turned the land into a furnace. Elena kept it spare: a table, 2 chairs, a narrow bed, her father's rifle mounted above the door. The Winchester 76 had 43 notches carved into the stock. Elena had added 7 more over the years. Not something she was proud of, just something that was true. Marcus Webb had been her foreman for 18 years. 63 years old, lean as jerky, with hands that could doctor a sick calf or splice barbed wire with equal skill. He lived in the bunkhouse with 2 seasonal hands, Miguel and Tom, both young men who'd learned quickly that Elena Varga didn't suffer fools or laziness. The ranch ran 200 head of cattle, not enough to get rich, but enough to survive if the work was smart and nobody minded the isolation. Elena worked harder than any of her hands. She'd be in the saddle before sunrise, riding fence lines, checking water holes, moving cattle between pastures. Her body ached in ways it hadn't when she was younger. Her left knee was bad. Her hands were gnarled from arthritis, but she never complained. Marcus would watch her sometimes, shaking his head. 18 years of watching her refuse to quit, refuse to sell, refuse to remarry, though 3 different ranchers had tried. She'd buried a husband in 1879. Pneumonia took him fast and never looked back. Land doesn't care if you're tired, she told Marcus once. Cattle don't care if your knee hurts. You do the work or you lose everything. The work was honest and brutal. Summer heat that could kill a man. Winter cold that froze water trough solid. Drought years when the creek ran thin and every blade of grass had to be rationed. Elena knew every acre, every rock, every place where the fence needed constant repair. On Sundays, she'd sit on the porch with Marcus, both of them drinking coffee strong enough to strip paint. They'd talk about cattle prices, weather, which hands were worth keeping. Sometimes they'd talk about nothing at all, just sit in comfortable silence while the sun climbed. You ever think about selling? Marcus had asked once, years ago. Elena had looked at him like he'd suggested burning down the house. This land killed my father, killed my mother, took my husband. I'll be damned if I give it up because it's hard. That was the last time Marcus asked. The water rights were the key to everything. The spring-fed creek ran through the north section, reliable even in drought years. Elena's cattle drank from it. So did every wild thing in 50 miles. The creek made the ranch valuable in a way the grass never could. Daniel Mercer knew that. He came on a Tuesday in late July, riding a black gelding too fine for ranch work, wearing a suit too clean for honest travel. 8 men flanked him, Hired muscle with the flat eyes of men who'd done ugly things and would do more. They rode in a loose formation, not hurried, like men who knew nobody would challenge them. Elena was on the porch when they arrived. She'd seen them coming from a mile away, the dust rising in the still air. Marcus was by the barn, his hand already resting on the rifle leaning against the doorframe. Miguel and Tom had stopped work, watching. Mercer didn't dismount. He sat tall in his saddle, looking down at Elena like a man appraising livestock. "Mrs. Varga," he said. His voice was smooth, educated. "Eastern. I represent the Western Irrigation and Development Company. We're prepared to make a generous offer for your property." Elena rocked in her chair. Didn't stand. "My property isn't for sale. I don't think the situation has been explained properly." Mercer smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We're prepared to offer $12,000. That's more than fair for land this marginal. I understand exactly what you're offering." The answer is no. "We're also prepared to pursue other avenues if necessary. Legal avenues. The company has lawyers, Mrs. Varga. Very good lawyers who specialize in water rights and property disputes dating back to territorial days." Elena stood then, slow, her knee protesting. She was 5 feet 4 inches tall, weathered and hard as the land itself. "I have a deed, signed by the territorial governor in 1862, and I have this." She patted the Winchester resting across her lap. Nobody had seen her bring it out. "One's as legal as the other." The man to Mercer's left shifted in his saddle. His hand drifted toward his belt. Marcus stepped out from the barn, rifle already at his shoulder. "Wouldn't recommend it." Mercer's eyes found Marcus. Calculated. Then found Elena again. The smile was gone now. "We'll be back," he said, "with proper papers. Legal authority. This land will be ours, Mrs. Varga. One way or another." Elena's voice was steady as stone. "Better men than you have tried. Ask their widows how it worked out." They rode away. The dust from their horses hung in the air long after they had disappeared. Marcus came to the porch as the sun touched the mountains. Elena was still sitting there, the Winchester across her lap, her coffee long gone cold. "How many times is this?" Marcus asked. "Fourth." Elena's voice was tired. "First 3, I was younger. Had my husband for 2 of them. But this one's different. The company and the men, those weren't local thugs. Those were professionals." Marcus sat on the porch step, his rifle beside him. "What do you want to do?" "Same thing I always do. Stay. They'll come back with more men. Maybe the law too, if they've bought the right people. Then we'll deal with it when they come." Elena looked out at the land, the hills turning gold in the evening light. "My father built this house stone by stone. My mother planted every tree that survived. I bury my husband out there by the windmill. This land has my blood in it, Marcus. Literally. I'm not leaving. I'm not asking you to leave. I'm asking if you're ready to die here." Elena was quiet for a long time. "I've been ready for that since the day I inherited it." The next morning, Elena rode out to check the north pasture. The cattle were scattered but healthy, grazing along the creek. She sat her horse for a while, watching the water flow clear and cold from the rocks. This was what Mercer wanted. Not the land, not the grass. Just this water, flowing eternal while the desert baked around it. She thought about her father, who'd found this spring in 1862 and known immediately it was worth dying for. She thought about her mother, who'd lost 2 children to scarlet fever but stayed anyway. She thought about her husband, who'd worked himself into an early grave trying to make the ranch prosper. All of them had chosen this land. All of them had paid for it. Elena rode back as the sun climbed toward noon. When she reached the house, she found Marcus waiting with a telegram. From Santa Fe, Marcus said, "Sheriff's Office." Elena read it twice. The words were bureaucratic, careful. The Western Irrigation and Development Company had filed a claim disputing the validity of her deed. A territorial judge would hear the case in 60 days. Until then, she was advised to avoid any confrontations or violence that might prejudice her position. 60 days, Elena said. She handed the telegram back to Marcus. They're giving themselves time to build a case, or to make you give up and sell before it goes to court, or to come back with enough men that it doesn't matter what any judge says. Elena walked to the house, her knee aching. Inside, She took down her father's rifle. The Winchester 76 was clean, oiled, perfect. She'd maintained it for 31 years the way some people maintained family Bibles. That evening, Marcus brought news from town. The Western Irrigation and Development Company wasn't just some Eastern outfit. It was backed by railroad money, mining money, cattle baron money. They'd already bought out 4 other ranches in the territory, always targeting the ones with good water. Always offering money first, then lawyers, then force. Nobody's beaten them yet, Marcus said. The Martinez family held out for 3 months. Lost everything in court. The Hendersons sold after their barn burned down. The Coopers. I know, Elena said. I know what happens. So what do we do? Elena looked at the rifle in her hands. 43 notches her father had carved. 7 she'd added. Each one a man who tried to take what wasn't his. We prepare, she said, however long it takes. The preparations took 3 days. Elena sent Miguel to Santa Fe with money and a list. Ammunition, supplies, anything that could be used to fortify the house. Tom rode to the neighboring ranches, spreading word. Most wouldn't help. They were too scared of the company, too worried about their own land. But a few listened. Marcus spent those days turning the ranch into something defensible. He reinforced the barn, set up firing positions behind water troughs and wood piles, mapped the approaches, calculated distances, determined where attackers would have to cross open ground. You were a soldier, Elena said, watching him work. Long time ago. Different war. Marcus drove another nail into a brace. But some things don't change. Defending ground is defending ground. Think we can hold it? Against 8 men? Yes. Against 20. Marcus shook his head. We need more guns. More people. Then we'll make do with what we have. On the 4th day, a rider came from town. Not one of Mercer's men. This was Billy Oakes, who ran the general store. He was young, nervous, clearly uncomfortable. Mrs. Varga, he said, not dismounting. Mr. Mercer wanted me to deliver a message. He says the company's prepared to raise their offer to $15,000. Final offer. You have until Friday to accept. Friday's 2 days away, Elena said. Yes, ma'am. He wanted me to tell you. Billy swallowed hard. He said if you don't accept, they'll take the land anyway. They've got 20 men coming. Professionals. They'll arrive Friday morning. Elena's face didn't change. Anything else? He said. Billy looked miserable. He said nobody has to die. You just have to sign the papers and leave. Tell Mr. Mercer I said no. Ma'am, 20 men. I heard you. The answer is still no. Billy rode away looking like he'd just delivered a death sentence. Maybe he had. That night, Elena and Marcus sat on the porch. The stars were coming out bright and cold. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. 20 men, Marcus said. Professionals. We can't win that fight. Probably not. So why are we doing this? Elena was quiet for a long time. Because if I leave, what was it all for? My father dying to hold this land. My mother working herself to death. My husband buried out there. All of it for what? So some company in Denver could buy it for less than it's worth and turn the water into profit. It's just land, Elena. No. Her voice was hard. It's not just land. It's the only thing that can't be taken unless I let it be taken. Everything else in this world, people, money, time, it all gets taken eventually. But land? Land you have to surrender. And I won't. Marcus nodded slowly. Then we make them pay for every inch. Friday came clear and hot. By 8 in the morning, the temperature was already climbing toward brutal. Elena stood on the porch, the Winchester in her hands, watching the eastern horizon. They came at 9. 20 men, just like Billy had said. They rode in a double column, organized, professional. No dust cloud of confusion, just steady, inexorable approach. At the front rode a man in a black duster despite the heat. His face was weathered, scarred, the face of a man who'd killed before and would kill again. They stopped 200 yards out. The man in the duster dismounted, walked forward alone until he was 100 yards from the house. Mrs. Varga, he called. His voice carried easily across the distance. My name is Samuel Cross. I work for the Western Irrigation and Development Company. I'm here to serve you with a court order granting the company immediate possession of this property pending resolution of the ownership dispute. You're not serving me with anything, Elena called back. I have legal authority. I don't care what you have. This is my land. You're trespassing. Cross was silent for a moment. Then, ma'am, I don't want anyone to get hurt. But I have a job to do. I'm authorized to use whatever force is necessary to execute this order. You have until noon to vacate the premises. Elena checked her pocket watch. 9:15. That's 3 hours from now. Yes, ma'am. And if I don't leave, then we'll remove you by force. Elena looked at the 20 men behind Cross. Professional gunmen, every one. Men who'd done this work before, who knew how to take ground and hold it. Men who wouldn't hesitate. She thought about her father, bleeding out from Apache arrows, still firing until his rifle clicked empty. She thought about her mother, washing his blood from the porch stones the next morning, then staying. She thought about all the years, all the work, all the choice that had led to this moment. Marcus, she called. Tom, Miguel. The 3 men appeared from their positions. Armed. Ready. Elena looked back at Cross. You've got your answer. Come and take it. Cross's expression didn't change. He turned and walked back to his men. They didn't mount up. Instead, they spread out, forming a wide line, taking positions, preparing. The 3 hours until noon felt like 3 days. Elena and her defenders waited. Tense, silent. The sun climbed higher. The heat built. Sweat ran down faces, stinging eyes. Nobody moved. At 11:45, Cross stood up from where he'd been crouched behind a rock. Mrs. Varga. Last chance. Elena didn't respond. At 11:55, Cross drew his pistol and fired one shot in the air. 20 men stood and started walking toward the house. They moved spread out, professional, using what cover there was. 100 yards became 90. 90 became 80. 70. Elena aimed carefully at Cross. 60 yards. Good range for the Winchester. Her hands were steady despite her racing heart. 50 yards. She fired. Crack. Cross went down, grabbed his leg, rolled behind a rock. The men behind him scattered, diving for cover, returning fire. Chaos. Bang, bang, bang. Bullets tore through the air, smacked into adobe walls, shattered windows, kicked up dust. Marcus fired from the barn. Crack, crack. A man screamed, fell, didn't get up. Tom was at the water trough. Bang. Another man down. Elena worked the lever, fired again. Crack. Missed. Worked the lever. Crack. A man grabbed his shoulder, stumbled. The attackers weren't retreating. They advanced between shots, using covering fire professional tactics. 40 yards now. 30. Too close. Marcus killed another one. Bang. 3 down. But there were still 17. And they were coming. 20 yards. A man made it to the side of the barn. Miguel shot him through the wall. Bang. 4 down. But 2 more reached the barn from the other side. They fired through gaps in the boards. Marcus shouted, fell back. Elena swung her rifle toward the barn. Crack. One of the men dropped. Crack. The other dove for cover. Marcus, she shouted. I'm hit. His voice strained. Shoulder. Tom ran toward the barn. Bang. Bang. Covering fire. He made it inside, grabbed Marcus, started dragging him toward the house. The attackers poured fire into the barn. Wood splintered. Bullets punched through. Elena fired until her Winchester clicked empty. 12 rounds gone. She dropped it, grabbed her father's old pistol from her belt. 6 rounds. Bang. 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 6 down now. 14 left. But they were everywhere. Behind the water trough. At the barn. Flanking the house. This was it. This was how it ended. Then she heard new gunfire from the east. Bang. 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 Different guns. Different positions. The attackers spun, confused. 3 of them went down in seconds from the new fire. Elena looked and saw riders cresting the hill. 10 of them. Neighbors. Ranchers. Men who decided that maybe one woman's stand meant something after all. The battle lasted another 3 minutes. The attackers, caught in crossfire, broke. They scattered, ran for their horses. Some made it. Some didn't. When the smoke cleared, 11 of Cross's 20 men were dead or wounded. The rest were gone, fleeing across the desert. Cross himself lay behind a rock, his leg bleeding badly, his pistol empty. Elena walked out to him. Her knee screamed with every step, but she didn't limp. She stood over him, her father's pistol in her hand. "You could have avoided this," Cross said through gritted teeth. "All you had to do was leave. All you had to do was not come. The company owns half this territory. They'll send more men. 20, 50, however many it takes." Elena lowered the pistol. "Then they'll need more coffins. Get off my land." The neighbors helped with the wounded. Marcus would recover. The bullet had gone through clean. Two of the neighbors had minor wounds. Miguel had a graze across his ribs. Tom was unscathed but shaking. They buried the dead in a gully a mile from the house. Quick graves, no markers. The wounded attackers they bandaged and sent away with a message. "Tell the company this land is not for sale." That evening, as the sun set, Elena sat on her porch. The neighbors had gone home. Marcus was sleeping in the bunkhouse, his shoulder packed and bandaged. Miguel and Tom were repairing the barn. The ranch was quiet again. The same land, the same hills, the same creek flowing eternal. But something had changed. Word would spread. A woman and her foreman had held off 20 professionals. Neighbors had rallied. The Western Irrigation and Development Company had failed. It wouldn't be the last attempt. Elena knew that. But it would be harder now. Costlier. The company would have to weigh whether this particular 1,200 acres was worth the blood and the story. 3 weeks later, Elena received a telegram. The company was withdrawing its legal claim. They'd found another water source. They were moving their operations north. Marcus read the telegram and shook his head. "They're lying. They're just moving on to easier targets." "Probably. You won." Elena looked out at her land. "My father won. My mother won. They held this ground first. I just kept holding it. The ranch survived. Elena ran it for another 13 years, until arthritis made riding impossible. She sold it then, finally, to a young family with 3 children. She made them promise to keep the name Varga Ranch and to never sell the water rights. She died in 1916 in the territorial capital, in a boarding house room that cost more per month than her ranch had earned in a good year. She was 77 years old, but the ranch still stands. The same stone house, the same creek, different cattle, different hands, different name on the deed. The story survived too. In bars and around campfires, men still tell about the woman who held her ground when 20 professionals came to take it. Some details change. The number of attackers grows. The battle becomes more dramatic, but the core remains true. Elena Vargas stood when standing seemed impossible. She fought when fighting seemed suicidal. She held ground worth holding, not because it was valuable, but because surrendering it would mean everything before had been for nothing. That lesson, that some things are worth the cost, whatever the cost might be, still resonates, still matters, still holds. If you found this story valuable, consider subscribing for more true tales of courage, principle, and the people who refuse to bend when the world demands they break. Because the past is lessons the present desperately needs to remember.